what's next. Today, what we're going to work on, we're going to make flocking material for building models, tabletop war games, dioramas, whatever, whatever you need to make it for. Flocking is basically fake grass. This isn't going to be necessarily like photorealistic looking stuff. It's not static grass or anything like that. It's just ground cover to give it a more realistic appearance rather than just using paint. You can go to the store and buy the stuff. You can get a pretty good sized container, but it costs, I don't know, God, it's been a long time since I actually bought the stuff. But I know it wasn't cheap when I used to buy it, probably, 15 years ago. It's probably the last time I bought it. And then you got to actually be able to track it down, but maybe you don't have a store in your area that sells it. Maybe you haven't heard of Amazon, where you go on and just buy it online. But we're going to go ahead and make our own, because all it is just painted sawdust. And I'm out here in a shop, and I have access to huge quantities of sawdust. Probably the best source of making sawdust is when I grind out them 3D flags or do any of the other power grinding that I do, power carving. It produces a really nice, fine grain sawdust. You don't want big chunky shit because it isn't going to look right. You want really small stuff. So you got to start off with a pile of sawdust. That's what I got in this right here. But you still want to go ahead and sift through it because it's going to be full of undesirable chunks. So you just go into the house, grab a freaking flour sifter. I'm sure nobody will mind stealing kitchen utensils to come out here and sift sawdust with. And then you want another bucket to sift it into. And then we're going to paint it. So it's a extremely complicated process. Move it around, and then you're left with all the big crap and all the nice fine powdery shits down in there. So it is a little time consuming, and it's going to be up to you. Is it worth the time to do it and save a whole bunch of money, or would you rather just go out and buy the stuff? Plus, if you make it yourself, you can make it any damn color you want. If you look outside, rarely is grass one color. Especially like my yard. My yard's freaking about 900 different colors. It is just all kinds of different weeds and everything like that. My yard's too goddamn big to try and take care of with chemicals and knock all the weeds back. And so I got brown spots and different shades of green. But to dye this stuff, you just go and get some cheap ass freaking craft paint. And if that matter, you can make your grass blue. I don't know what kind of good drugs you're on for doing that, but it is a possibility. If you have a shop and you've got a dust collector in there, the dust collector does a really good job of capturing the right grit of sawdust that you're going to need. Okay, it's all sifted out. I got a nice, fine, sawdusty powder. Now I can just take the flour sifter back in and sneak it back in the drawer, and nobody will be the wiser. So now I'm going to make two different colors. I got this Christmas tree green and nutmeg. So I'm going to have a brown and a green freaking grass. So we'll just take and separate out about half of this. Well, that's not half, but I want more green than brown. Now I just put some gloves on. Even your most perfectly manicured friggin' lawns, like on a golf course or whatever, you're still going to have brown in it. You'll have an underlayer of thatch. So when you do your terrains and that, sometimes it's nice to grab a pinch of the brown, throw it in with your green when you go and flock the materials. These are just cheapo craft paints. You gotta shake them up a little bit. Bought these, what is it, Apple Barrel brand craft paints. I got it at Walmart for this big 8-ounce jug, $2.50 at Walmart. All right, I got both of them good and mixed up. You want to make sure, spend a decent amount of time doing it when you're getting in there and you're mixing. Make sure you get your fingers down into the edges and really pull that away from the edges and mix it up, because this stuff will get kind of clumpy down in there. And if you don't do a really good job of mixing it, when you go and pour it out to let it dry, you're going to find out you got areas that just don't have any paint in them. So now what we got to do, we need to let this dry overnight. So I got a board, get some wax paper, tin foil, whatever, and you'll just lay it out on here. Dump it out, let it go all over your workbench. I have to get another board. Get it laid out so it's relatively thin, so it'll dry better. Now it is possible you can take, if you put this on tin foil, put it on a baking sheet, you can put it in your oven on a really, really low temperature and let it bake for a while. But it is wood, and wood and heat, they work quite well together. So maybe you don't want to do that. It can be done, but laying it out on a board, just let it freaking dry overnight, will be fine. Let's set this one here. Let me grab another board. I don't have as much of the brown, so we don't need as big of a board. Taping it down probably ain't wholly necessary, but I'm gonna anyways. All right, let's dump out the brown. That's an empty container. All right, so we got to let this sit for a good 24 hours, let that craft paint thoroughly dry, and then we can come back through and we'll put it in a bucket and we'll just rub it in our hands, make sure it's all broke up. There aren't any clogs, chunks. There aren't any fucking chunks in here. And then we can put them in some containers. These plastic containers, I got these from work. I had to rebuild an air dryer for our plasma cutter, needed new desiccant in the air dryer. And the new desiccant pellets came in these cheap little plastic containers, and rather than throwing them in the trash, I was like, well, shit, those will come in handy. So I brought them home and I stuck them on a shelf like I do most everything else and lose track of them. And then there's like, hey, I got a need for these cheap little plastic containers. And if you go to your hobby store, railroad modeling store, or whatever, you buy this stuff, this is pretty much exactly the container that's going to come in. And 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever the last time I bought freaking flocking material, I wanted to say a tub about this size is going to run you about 20 bucks. Don't quote me on that, because chances are I'm completely fucking wrong. But right now, what I've got invested in this, if you don't include the wax paper, the only thing that I really had to go spend money on are these 2 bottles of craft paint. And I only use half of the green and about 3/8 of the brown. So $2.50 per bottle. What are we looking at? Maybe I might be $2.50, $2.50 worth of paint into this so far. And these are going to more than likely completely fill these, if not overfill on the green. And, there's probably going to be $30, $40 worth of flocking material here. You know what? I'm going to shut the camera off. We'll come back tomorrow when this shit is dry. Quick tip. Don't try and dry it faster by putting a fan in front of it. It'll make your life hell. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, so I got my flocking nice and dried out overnight. So now we're going to put it back into a bucket so you can get in there and really crumple this up, make sure there's no chunks or anything. And then we'll make a little paper funnel and we'll put them in their containers. See if I can do this without making a horrendous mess. Perhaps I shouldn't have taped them down. Get my just stir them up, make sure you ain't got no big chunks. we go. Perfect little container of the flock. I got all of about $2 freaking wrapped up in this. If you got sawdust and you got paint, you can make your own flock. You don't need to go out and freaking buy the shit. Now, there are a few, I don't know if you can see in there or not, there's a few kind of bigger chunks in there. If you want, you can always go through and just re-sift this out and get any big chunks out, so you're just left with the super fine powdery flock. So now I can set that with the mountains of other freaking terrain making supplies that I've got that I never use. These are just Petri dishes that I keep different supplies in. And this one here, that's oil dry. It makes great freaking fake rocks. This stuff makes good freaking desert sand. It's just freaking sandblasting medium. And these are just little freaking pieces of limestone. I think it's limestone. I don't know. Some sort of rock that I had out. There's a great big freaking stone that was out in the flower bed. And water would get down into it. And then it would freeze during the winter and it would peel off freaking just little thin slabs. And just went in there with a screwdriver and picked them out. Broke them up a little bit into a hammer. And they work really good for basing models and well, that's it to making flock. So if you want to build models, terrain, diorama, whatever, you don't need to go out and spend a whole shitload of money. Like all of this stuff, you can, for like $5, you can go buy a 50-pound bag of oil dry, and you have 10 lifetimes worth of scale rock that you can use. This just a freaking rock out in the garden that I broke chunks off of, a bag of sandblasting medium. I don't know where I got that or how much it cost. But anyways, terrain can come from anywhere, and you don't need to spend a fortune on it. So don't forget to hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. See you next time.